Hi everyone and welcome back to this feature looking at reviews of musical gear. In this case today we're doing an unboxing of the very innovative Bastl Dude Mixer. So the Dude Mixer is one of these mixers that if you just saw it somewhere in a music store or something like this or online, you would be surprised that anything this small and anything running on 1, 2, 3, 4 AA batteries could be at all good. Let me just say it's one of the best mixers out there and I use it all the time, particularly for my microenvironment series. I've actually modified this a little bit. I don't like those little small dials, so I added some of my own, and this gives me a little more control over my mix. It's a 5-channel mixer, which is pretty crazy given the size of it and again given the fact that it runs on batteries. So for me, the Dude Mixer offers a lot of versatility in addition to its form factor and its size, the fact that it runs on batteries or an adapter if you'd like, the fact that it's 5 channels, it has these mute buttons, not totally silent in terms of the muting, and we can talk about that in the review, but in addition to being a mixer for a small performance desktop setup like my microenvironment series that many of you may have seen on my YouTube channel, you can do some really wonderful things here. If you use it for audio, it also has some amazing potentials in terms of creating almost like wave folding, like distortion and overdrive on some of your channels, and we'll experiment with some of that. And then lastly, I don't know if you knew it, but using a few simple cables and a multiplier, you can actually create some simple drones using your mixer. So it actually could double as a drone device if you were doing a performance somewhere. So a very versatile mixer that we're going to talk about today. So let's dive into the review now, looking at the Bastl Dude Mixer. Okay, so let's take a look now with the unboxing of the Bastl Dude Mixer. And just like the Castle, you get this cool little box. I like how everything's compact with what Bastl includes. You're going to get the unit in there, the mixer. You're also going to get a sticker, and you will get a instruction manual. So a lot of cool stuff. And I always like how they include that little sticker. It's just like a little bit extra in the package. And you also get the cool wrapping paper that always has an abstract, like synthesizer, modular kind of reference. I'm trying to unfold it here. In this case, I think there's also a phrase, something about a low-pass filter there. So always cool to get that. I like nice boxes and nice packaging. I don't know about you, but it's always a good bonus with the equipment that we get. So the Bastl Dude Mixer, as you know, is a 5-channel mono mixer. It comes with this handy instruction manual, and I do recommend you take a look at that. And I will show up here on the screen in just a bit information on how to find that online. You just go to Bastl Instruments and you can download it. Just click on the instrument that you're interested in. It has anything related to that instrument, reviews, press features, user manual, PDF, videos. Also, if anything involves like source code, GitHub links, then that will also be included. So the manual is pretty good, and it does explain some of the unique features of this mixer. In particular, later in the video, I'll have a slide that talks about batteries, and that might be interesting for some of you in terms of headroom. You just saw it there on the manual, and we'll actually look at that in a little more depth later. Okay, so we'll look here a little more at the mixer. As we've said, it's a 5-channel mixer, and one of the things you're going to note is that I've modified the knobs on mine. I just didn't like the small knobs, and you find those on a lot of gear. In the case of the Bastl Castle, which you're going to see in that review video as well, I think my modification of those knobs has resulted in a negative effect because I can't any longer as well patch the DuPont cables. In this case, the only thing you're really blocking is right between channels 2 and 1 there on the left-hand corner. You have your on-off switch, and so once that's on, presumably you're going to leave it on if you're doing a gig or a performance. And then as far as the mute buttons, you can still access those on the bottom of the mixer regardless of what types of knobs you have plugged in or not. So for me, it was a good decision just because I wanted to have a little more control over dialing in my levels, so that's something you could also consider in your own work depending on how you're using this mixer in your performance setup. So in just a bit in the feature section, we'll talk all about the various features of this mixer, but I think it's a very unique mixer for its price point. It runs on 4 AA batteries. It has 5 channels for your mix, which is kind of a lot for this form factor, this size. It also has the 5 mute buttons, and it has the ability to run off of a USB in addition if you don't want to use batteries. When you get into the mixer itself, as you'll see both in the feature section and in the sound example section, you're going to discover there's a lot of unique features to this mixer. The competition that you can set up between one channel and the other creates some abilities to create a quasi sidechain effects or even ducking effects. Also, that plus dB that is possible on any of the 5 channels for gain is really powerful. So it's a powerful mixer in terms of that ability to really crank things and to create some quasi wave shaping distorted effects, some saturated effects. Really nice feature of that mixer. Now, one thing that's noted in the instruction manual, if you're interested in this, go back to that manual, check it out, is that you're not going to really be able to use it to work with your modular signals. I'm talking about the actual CV signals, not the audio signals. We'll get ample examples of audio signals from your modular in a little bit here in the video. But if you did want to do something with mixing CV signals, they talk about adding a resistor, and you could read about that in the manual. That's not something I would take on personally due to my lack of electronic skills. But if you want something like that, you could read into it and see if that's going to fit your need in terms of being able to also mix CV signals. So right now, let's jump into the features section of this review of the Dude Mixer. All right, so in terms of talking about the features of the Bastl Dude, as we've gone over in the unboxing, it's a versatile mixer. I think one of the main reasons you'd probably be looking at this mixer over another smaller mixer, such as this Yamaha mixer, is its size, its price, the fact that it uses a battery power or an adapter. It makes it very convenient if you're doing anything with small synthesizers. Again, if I'm using just this space to do my micro environment series, having a mixer like this is going to take up almost, close to a fourth of that particular space, whereas this mixer takes up very little space. The other thing about it is it's incredibly powerful for its size, having 5 inputs, and it's also unique in terms of just how it is wired inside and some of the abilities you have to do features like quasi wave folding, gain adjustment, ducking and side chaining, which we'll get into in the sonic examples here in a second. Of course, the drone feature as well, and of course, in some cases, these features could be done on a traditional mixer as well. You can always turn any mixer into a sonic source just by chaining things together and using your inputs and outputs in various ways. And you can find examples of that all over YouTube. And I just wanted to say that this particular mixer here is the mixer I use when I'm gigging with my blues band. And I basically just need a couple of inputs, but I want to be able to have effects. So it wouldn't be a good case for me to use this mixer. Also, if I want XLR inputs, I have that ability here. Again, some minor effects here, delay and reverb, and also some EQ as well. So using a mixer like this, which comes in a little bit higher than the Bastl, but not that much more, it's just something that gives me a little more flexibility and practical use in a gigging situation, playing keyboards and playing my MIDI wind instrument, my Yamaha wind instrument. Whereas using this mixer, it's going to be more well suited for my microenvironment series and something where I want a really small desktop setup, such that I don't have to worry about lugging something this big. And having an extra wall wart to worry about with this mixer is also a reason to go with something that has that option for battery power. And unlike, say, the Little Bits by Korg, which I'm reviewing, I haven't noticed a big drain on these batteries. So that's another advantage to using a mixer like this, is not having to even worry about having the wall wart, you can use some rechargeables and get by pretty well just with the batteries. And talking about small format mixers, I think is another key area for this video. So if you're interested in small mixers, you could certainly think about a slew of different mixer possibilities out there. You know, Behringer, Yamaha, Mackie all have small format mixers. Some of them even will give you a USB interface with your computer, so that could be desirable if you're looking for that. Again, look at the features first. This is probably really going to be marketable to a very specific niche of individuals who want something this size and maybe are doing something semi-modular or modular where you're only worried about having mono inputs. Again, if you want stereo, if you want to do anything with panning, you can't do that with this mixer. You'd have to go with something like this or another mixer. I can put up on screen here just some of the sample mixers you can find on Amazon. Some of these are way lower, even a third of the price of the Bastl. I do not vouch for the quality of those mixers, and that's certainly something you'd want to think about, is whether or not you're getting a good value, because I've heard that some of those mixers, just reading reviews, can be quite bad. The ones that you find on eBay or Amazon. Have very fond memories of, I'll put up on the screen here as well, of my old realistic Radio Shack mic and line mixers that we used in bands because we were lacking inputs and we were lacking the money to buy a nice mixing console. And so we got by certainly on those old cheap mixers. They were super noisy. They introduced so much noise into the mix, but sometimes when you're playing loud, it wasn't a big deal. If we were recording, we certainly wouldn't use one of those mixers, one of those Radio Shack mixers. Kind of miss the Radio Shack. I don't know if you do as well. But this is, from what I've discovered, fairly low noise. Again, if you're doing some of that gain adjustment, the plus 20 dBs, and some of that stuff that you can read about in the manual and experience in the sonic examples coming up, you're probably not worried too much about noise being introduced, but I haven't noticed any issues there. Now, as they note, there can be an audible click if you're muting and unmuting the buttons, so that's something to think about if you're doing performance, just maybe an issue there. And if you wanted to get really crazy and wanted high-end performance mixing, you could look into something like the 1010 Music Blue Box, which I think has been very hard to find. It's about 5 times the price of the Bastl Dude at $4.99, but you get 6 stereo or 12 mono inputs. You also get recording on an SD card, and you also get delay and reverb insert effects on each channel. So you could really think of this as tailoring your mixer needs to whatever performances you are planning. I might also add to this that when I think about mixers, I'm just looking around here, I probably have 4 mixers just in terms of glorified mixers, not talking about any mixer modules in my modular world here. But I have a very big Allen & Heath, which I do for all my recordings. Having all those channels available, up to 16 channels, stereo XLR, very important for studio use. Again, use this one for gigging. Very small, but does a little bit more than the Dude. And the Dude is very useful when I'm working in my microenvironment series and I'm using small boxes. Anything ranging from some of my folk tech gear, my Elotone, the Bastl Castle, any of my Volca gear, the Korg NTS-1, the Bastl Castle 1.5 as well. And so it has a very specific purpose. I would really suggest to you, it's almost like if you own, like I do, 3 or 4 ladders in your house or apartment or condo. You often do that because you have different needs. You sometimes have to get on the roof, and so you need a really long extendable ladder. You might need a higher ladder to get boxes in the garage or in the attic, a medium-sized ladder for smaller chores, and then something like a 1 or 2 step stool to get small things out of your kitchen cabinets. It's really, I think, the same analogy. We could apply that to the world of mixers because sometimes they serve different purposes. So it's less about which is better and more about what is the specific use that you have in mind. So what I would recommend to you as you think about the features of any mixer, if you're thinking about the Dude, definitely think about what it offers and if it's going to meet your needs. Again, the price point is very easy to handle. I think it's very inexpensive, particularly probably on the used market if you have a chance to get one. So next we're going to jump into sonic examples, and some of these will have narration on top and others will just have title cards that explain what is going on. But each of these will feature a different sonic use of this mixer, ranging from drones, ranging from using it as a performance mixer, and even mixing in and working with that gain adjustment on the 5 channels with some of your modular gear. So let's jump into the next section here with some sonic examples of the Dude mixer. Okay, so for this next approach with the Dude Mixer, let's talk about using it as a modular mixer. And this is not certainly talking about using CV signals, we're talking about using audio signals. So you may already have a mixer set up in your modular system, but this is a nice way to mix some signals in. So what I'll do here is I will take a drone signal. Input 1 there, the green is the main output coming from Platts. And then the second is the auxiliary output from that same oscillator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to then take my mult signal and I'm going to actually then start patching this back in on itself. And this is a technique that we've used or will be using in this video throughout, talking about, say, using the Dude Mixer as a drone generator. So this is sort of a twist on that technique by including some of that pure signal from the oscillator and then basically rerouting additional signals, as we'll start here. So again, I'm taking my multiplier, I'm just taking a copy of the signal that is going out of the mixer, putting it back into the mixer, engaging channel 3, and then dialing in the tones. And what you begin to get, because of just the properties of this mixer in terms of how you can get channels of the mixer competing with one another, you get some interesting sounds that remind me of wave shaping and wave folding. It's also, I think, very unpredictable. So one of the things you'll notice throughout this demo with the mixer, now we're adding yet another out from the mult into channel 4, and we're going to dial that in. But as you're going through this and moving the knobs, you will dial in a sound maybe that you like, and that's one of the cool things that I like about this mixer, is that it can actually promote a little bit of experimentalism that you don't normally think about in terms of a clean mixer. So now we're taking yet another and final 3 copies of that signal back into channel 5. So by doing all this multiplication, multiplying of signals through the mult, we can really begin to produce, I think, some very interesting drone sounds with the mixer. You could certainly do this with any kind of module that you might have in your Eurorack system. Again, it's not anything that's terribly complicated or technical or innovative, but I think it does produce some interesting results, and it's an example of how you could have a very small piece of outboard gear that can be used in conjunction with your modular setup. Now, one of the whole points of a modular system is to keep everything encased inside your cases as a self-contained unit and have the parts interact with one another to create that whole. But this is an example of a small piece of gear, not unlike the Bastl Castle, which I'm also reviewing, so check out that review as well, that allows you to have some interesting interactions with your modular gear. Because it's so small, you could stick it on a side table, you could stick it on your keyboard stand, wherever, depending on your setup in terms of your modular setup. You could even put it on top of your modular system. If you're out performing somewhere, it would be a great opportunity to take a very small skiff case, put some gear in there, and then use the mixer for the drone possibilities, for the wave shaping, wave folding type possibilities, that gain adjustment that is possible with each of the channels on the mixer. So a lot of innovative and interesting ideas, I think, in terms of working with this mixer. So hopefully you'll get a chance like this to experiment a little bit in terms of incorporating the Dude Mixer in your modular system setup. Okay, so our next setup for the Dude Mixer, and we're building on some similar approaches. This is what I'm calling using it as an effects mixer. If you have a chance to look online and to read a little bit from Bastl and what they talk about in terms of using this mixer, you're pretty familiar with the idea that you can add a lot of things into various channels of the mixer to create interesting mixes. What you're hearing right now is the raw oscillator coming from Platts. And I'm going to use that now to actually multiply the signal but add some effects. So the first is I'm sending a copy of the signal. Again, I'm using my multipliers. I'm sending that output into a conduit. So you're getting that really interesting filter delay sound that you get from that Folktech piece of gear, the conduit. I'm going to send another copy here to Elements. And Elements, not unlike Rings, which will be coming up, is a really interesting percussive drone device that allows for some incredible string and bell sounds and physical modeling, which became kind of a big thing in modular a few years ago. And so what I'm doing is I'm sending the signal in, and then I'm creating this resonance and then adjusting it with the parameters, using the tuning, adjusting the shape, the FM mod, and many of the other parameters. I'm going to do a very similar thing and send another copy of the signal into Rings. Not unlike Elements, there's some similarity between those two modules. Two of my favorite modules, certainly in my whole Eurorack setup. And what I'm trying to show here is that you can use effects chains, and you get into some modules like rings and elements, and it's sort of like they're not really effects per se, but they have an effect of transforming, of bringing an audio signal in this case, and then using that to trigger something within that module to create interesting sounds that have different timbral qualities than that main oscillator sound that was introduced in channel 1 from our drone. Then lastly, we'll bring in a really heavy sound, a really heavy effect, and that is taking the signal through the multiplier and sending it to shard. The very interesting distortion module that is super hard to control, but it's going to add, I think, a nice bit of grit here to the mix. So what I'm trying to suggest here is, again, you can use this very freely with outboard effects. You could use it with your modular effects, with units like rings and elements in some very interesting ways. And again, using the 5 knobs allows you to really dial in the signal in some interesting and in some cases experimental senses, just because of that competition between the various channels here on the Dude mixer. All right, so that's it today here with the review of the Bastl Dude Mixer, one of my absolute favorite mixers out there. It is so small and convenient to use. You could take it anywhere, and it's about $100 or so, probably even cheaper used. For the price, really, you can't go wrong. High quality, great features, very great in terms of taking it anywhere and doing some small performance series. So thanks for listening. I'll be back in the future with additional reviews here in my electronic music technology review series.